Hello, my name's Mr. McQuire and I'm a science director. In today's lesson we're going to be looking at the topic of plant disease and defence. This is a biology only topic and it links with the previous lesson on monoclonal antibodies, which will appear as we run through this topic. You will need the following equipment: a pen, the paper and the Google document to record your responses, or the paper to do that as you go, and somewhere quiet and free from distractions from phones, etc., to do your work. If you need time to collect those, then please pause the video. So on your Google document, could you please think for a moment about why the following people would care about plant disease? So number one, I'd like to think about plant disease and you as an individual. I'd like to think about plant disease if you were a farmer. And thirdly, I'd like you to think about plant disease if you were the government of a country. You've got 2 minutes in which to record your answers and thoughts on the Google document. That's 1 minute. Okay, that's 2 minutes. Now I want to look at the answers that you've provided for yourself, and just provide a little bit of context, because this is really more important than many people think in terms of who cares about plants and disease. So why would the following people care about plant disease? First of all, from the perspective of you. Of course, the number one issue for humanity is placing food on a table and drinkable water. And that then is an individual for families and for individuals right around the world on a day-by-day basis. Then if you broaden that for a farmer, of course, they still have to provide food for themselves, and in many countries that's the purpose of a farm. It's no bigger than providing food for their own tables, so disease of a crop would mean that the farmer and the family would starve. But also then, of course, the farm has no source of income, because the loss of crop means there's nothing to sell. As far as government is concerned, disease can be a catastrophic event. I've put a picture of a memorial that comes from the Great Irish Potato Famine, which the blight of a potato crop caused the mass starvation of the population in the 1700s. That led to civil unrest, and we still have countless examples that I could have used. So this is Venezuela. I could have chosen Paris or South Africa as examples of places where disease has caused a shortage of food, which has led to rioting and governments trying to deal with that level of unrest. As a minimum, a government would want to provide what is called food security for its folks that live in that country. It's a basic requirement, and people will not elect governments that cannot provide that. So in the previous lesson, we looked at monoclonal antibodies, and I just wanted to put this slide in here to ensure that the work that we have done previously is still in your minds. So you can pause at this point and just revise the two tables that are on the right hand side. It's really important that we can still remember and take apart the word monoclonal antibody so that we understand what it means. If needs be, that's a lesson that you may need to go back to and look at totally. I'd like you to pause the video if the work on the right hand side requires further revision, and this is a good time to be doing it. Just try covering up one side of the information and then practicing recording the other side on your paper that you have with you. So on this slide we meet our keywords for today, which include deficiency or shortage, symptoms, pathogen, which is a microbe that causes disease, and a particular example, which is sclerosis. So looking at the slide itself, this slide informs you about plant disease. We've got a couple of examples that we need to remember. They're listed in the syllabus and the space on the Google Sheet for you to record them. The viral example I want you to remember is tobacco mosaic virus, or TMV. And the fungal disease example is black spot, which you could find on roses. And you can tell plants that have those because of particular symptoms. Now, these 7 bullet points that are here are again going to be recorded on the sheet. But let's go through the words first. Stunted or reduced growth, spots on the leaves, areas of decay, so that's dead parts of a leaf. Growths on the plant itself, so lumps and bumps that shouldn't be there. Malformed or disformed stems, discoloration of some kind from the rest of the plant around it or other plants, and the presence of pests. Those pests may be the things that, for example, carry the infection, so you can tell what it is by the pest. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes now to record the information. So first of all, there's a space to allow you to record the diseases against a virus and fungal, so you've got an example of each, but then to record those 7 symptoms that are listed on the sheet. So that's 2 minutes, please. So that's 1 minute so far and a minute remaining. Okay, so that's 2 minutes. If you need more time, feel free to pause the video to allow you to record those. So we have a list of symptoms. We have an example of 2 pathogens, a virus and a fungal disease, and we can tell and begin to explain where we would go to identify and use those symptoms to say what problems a plant have. A guidebook, for example, some kind of plant book or a website. So this next slide then covers that particular information. Where do we go to identify an infection? And obviously there are various places that a scientist or a gardener can go to. The first place we can go to is some kind of gardening manual or website, and there are literally dozens of these that you would describe the symptoms and look them up, and it will give you some kind of treatment and give you a name for that particular disease. If you were a commercial grower of plants and you needed an answer very, very quickly, or a very definite answer, then it's possible that you would send samples away to a laboratory where a biologist would spend some time, and you would have to pay somebody to test your plant to tell you what's wrong and recommend treatments for that. But the amount of crop that you produce is critical to the amount of money that you raise from selling that crop, so that's one option. For a smaller scale crop, many gardeners these days would use a kit which contained monoclonal antibodies. So this now connects with our previous lesson when we looked at infection control using those. There's space on your sheet again to record those 3 bullet points, and again, to repeat, diseases in plants can be identified by using, there's the question, and the answer are those 3 bullet points. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to record those 3 bullet points that are there on your Google Sheet where there's a space to do this. Five seconds remaining. Right, if you need extra time, of course, you can pause the video and use as much time as you need to complete that onto your paper or Google Sheet. So we're going to now look at our final area, which is deficiencies. So ions are absorbed in plants through the groundwater where they are soluble. and a shortage of those ions in the groundwater can result in some symptoms, and you have particular examples that you have to know, and we're going to record those. First thing I want to do is just to run through those quickly with you. The first shortage that we've got, or deficiency, is in a nitrate ion. Now, let's understand where the symptoms of stunted growth comes from. Nitrates, the nitrogen molecule that is in that, is in the center of a protein molecule. So proteins are needed for growth and repair. So a shortage of nitrates leads to a shortage of protein, which leads to a shortage of growth and repair. The next bullet point is about magnesium ions. Magnesium is a crucial molecule in the production of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is green and is involved in photosynthesis, so a shortage of magnesium means that a plant cannot produce enough chlorophyll, so that will affect its rate of photosynthesis. It will change the plant's color as well, and this is called chlorosis, which is one of the keywords at the bottom of the page if you look now. A lack of photosynthesis will result in a lack of green color in the plant. So on your Google sheet, we now need to record that information about nitrates and magnesium ions and the symptoms that they result in. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to record that information in the space provided on your Google sheet. Thank you. Okay, so that's 2 minutes. So you should now have information recorded about nitrates and magnesium ions. There are many products, for example, that you can buy that will green your lawn up overnight, and you water them onto the grass. And certainly those will contain magnesium ions to increase the amount of chlorophyll that's in production. So let's do some application now. So on an exam paper which is printed in black and white, when they put photographs of deficiencies, they are always really obvious because they are in shades of grey and black and white. So therefore, this is a luxury that you have in front of you. Having said that, it still means that you're going to have to think to be able to answer the questions that are here. Again, the answers are going onto your Google Sheet. So the questions recorded on the Google Sheet. Image A, the two plants on the left. The plant on the right is not growing properly. I've used that word. First thing I'd like you to do is to record how you know that it's not growing properly. So what are the symptoms? And secondly, for part B, what do you think, using the information we've recorded in this lesson, is causing these symptoms? And then I've added a part C. I would like you to suggest a treatment that you could provide to this particular farmer, or if it was your crop, to apply to the crop yourself, that would allow you to sort this particular problem out. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer that particular question. Rather than waiting, if you've managed to answer those questions quickly on the Google Sheet, then can you answer exactly the same questions for diagram B? But please notice the leaf in the middle is the one that's showing symptoms, and the healthy leaves are to either side of that. Okay, so looking closely at that photograph, and I can see from the photograph that the plant on the right has stunted growth. And I can also see that some of the leaves that are there are yellow, and you could record either of those or both of them for your answer to part A. Now, because the growth is reduced, I'm going to say for part B that there is a shortage of nitrates in the soil, because that's causing a lack of growth due to a lack of protein production. And then lastly, for part C, obviously if there's a shortage of nitrates in the soil, my suggested treatment would be that we would add some kind of fertilizer that contained nitrates. So now I've modeled that with you. If we now have a look at B, and you have a go in exactly the same way at example B on the diagram in front of you. Just bear in mind that the leaf in the center is the one that's showing the problem. It's not growing properly, and the leaves around it are fine. Okay, that's 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So as I've said already, these questions with photographs come up on exam papers quite often, and they'll be in black and white, not in colour. So just be ready for some of the differences that we can clearly see, even if I made those images black and white. So this slide now continues to look at the way that plants defend themselves, and you will notice that as we work through this, that some of the ways plants defend themselves we have stolen as well. So they're split into 3 separate sections. You need to know, first of all, plants defend themselves using physical methods and chemical methods and mechanical methods, and you should have an example or 2 of each of those. So let's go through them in some detail. First of all, our physical defenses. They can include strong cell walls which are made of cellulose, which obviously will protect the plant directly in every single cell from attack. Cells can be covered by a layer of wax, and you may have seen water sat in puddles on a leaf, and that's helping to prevent things like fungi in the water that's carried in the wind, for example, infecting the plant. Plants like trees have layers of cells all around them which are dead in the form of bark, which protects the tree. Secondly, the chemical defense response. We have antibacterial chemicals in plants to defend them, and we can utilize those ourselves to protect us as well as used by the plant. We also have poisons in plants to deter herbivores or plant-eating animals, and I found a whole book full of poisonous plants and things that you shouldn't let your pets eat, for example, while they're out. And then we have mechanical adaptations. We're used to spines, thorns on roses, for example, but also, of course, we have chemicals that are involved in nettles, but they're also spines to go into your skin. But there are some leaves which curl up when they're touched as well. And finally, I found this picture, which is just an amazing plant, an orchid that uses mimicry of animals to try and prevent itself from being eaten. And it took me a while to check on this, but you can actually buy seeds from this plant from Amazon at the moment as I'm recording this. And I find that an absolutely amazing image of a plant that is imitating a monkey. Now we need to record those, so yet again I'm going to give you, I think, probably 4 minutes this time to record in the headings on your Google Sheet the subsections which are physical defense, chemical defense, and mechanical adaptations. So if you can record the bullet points, that would be excellent. Ten seconds remaining. Just a reminder, you should have the 3 headings and you should have recorded the way that plants defend themselves as physical, chemical and mechanical adaptations that are there. Okay, so our last slide and the plenary. We should now be able to recall 5 ways we can detect a disease in plants. I'm going to feed you the word symptoms at that point. And we should be able to identify plant disease and where we would go to do that. We should know what happens to a plant when it doesn't get enough nitrates, and we should know what happens if a plant doesn't get enough magnesium. And then plant defense itself, I've just put down that you should have at least 2 examples of physical, 2 mechanical, and 2 chemical responses that a plant has in a defensive way. Now, if you pause the video at this moment, just check your understanding of each of those. Try reciting them to yourselves before we move on and answer the questions in the Google quiz that you've got, so that you have some deeper learning. So thanks for your time with this video.